Hello, everybody. It's James here, WSI. And before I introduce my next guest, we're going to do some plugs. First off, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, the People's Champion, a book I wrote. It's very good. It's on Amazon. And also Owen Hart, King of Pranks, another book I wrote full of all Owen Hart's pranks and biography and etc., etc., etc. And I'm saving the Owen Hart book for second because I want to... Well, first off, let's introduce our guest, Sean Morley, a.k.a. Val Venis. Hello.
Hello, James.
You just given me a ringtone there, my friend.
There we go. Heck yeah.
I've saved the Owen Hart book for last because I wrote this book to catalogue every single Owen Hart rib I could. And I was wondering if you could explain the picture. I'm going to show this to the main camera first. This picture. And I don't know if you can see that, Sean.
Let's see. Reception. Dang, I don't know. I've never seen that picture before.
Right, so my sister illustrated certain ribs that Owen Hart did, and in that one, you are in a hotel lobby, and there's a fan trying to get you to... Okay, you've got to tell the story straight off the bat, man.
All right, so this, I believe, was in St. Louis. And it was the Marriott Hotel right across the street from the airport in St. Louis. And we flew into St. Louis early in the morning. So we had an early morning flight. A lot of guys didn't have a lot of time to sleep the night before. Maybe got an hour or two. That was it. So the plan was catch the early morning flight to St. Louis, land, get our bags, get the rental car, head over to that Marriott, check in, and get a few extra hours of sleep before we get up and get to the gym, get something to eat, and then I head off to the arena ultimately, right? And so we landed in St. Louis, and in St. Louis, the Marriott always had a deal for the WWE guys, so there were really good rates on the rooms. So all the boys went to the Marriott when we were in St. Louis. And so we got the rental car, went over to the St. Louis Marriott. And when I walked in to go check in, there's already a bunch of guys standing in line to check in. The fans know that that's where we stay. And so there was a ton of fans in the lobby. And I'm waiting in line behind, a couple of the other guys to check in. And fans are coming up and they're saying, "Hey, Mr. Venis, can you sign this?" And of course, these are kids, right? And I'm like, "Yeah, we'll sign these for you," as I'm waiting in line. Then this one cat had long, dark, stringy hair, kind of greasy looking, had a stack of Val Venis photos about that thick. And he comes up, he goes, "Hey, Val," and he's looking around and "Would you mind signing all these for me?" And I go, "Bro, I'm not going to sign those for you. We can talk, that's some money. We can talk. I'll sign those for you, but I'm not going to sit out here and sign all those for you." And other kids are coming up, "Hey, can you sign my action figure?" And I'm signing it. And he goes, "Okay." And he walks away. And little did I know that Owen was behind me and he had heard this. And so I continue to stay in line and I'm signing things for kids. I finally get to the front of the line. I get checked in. I go up to my room and I'm dead tired. Just as I'm ready to crash out, my phone rings. And I pick it up and I'm like, "Hello." And the guy on the other side of the phone goes, "Hey, man, when you promised me that you're going to come back down and sign my pictures, you should honor that and come back down and sign my pictures." Now, the first guy that pops in my head is that guy with the long, stringy hair, kind of greasy looking guy. And I got angry. And don't you ever call my room again? It went off and I got really mad and I hung up the phone. And then within seconds, just as I hung up the phone and I was going back to lay back down, it rang again. And I'm like, no way he just called back that fast. And when I picked up the phone again, I went, "Hello." And it was the same guy. And he goes, "I'm a big man. You won't get by me." And I'm like, "Yeah." And I "Stay down there." And I slammed the phone down. I threw my clothes back on as fast as I could, tripping over myself, trying to pull my pants on. And then when I finally got all my gear back on, I didn't even wait for the elevator. I was like jumping down the flights of stairs, going back and forth to get down to the bottom floor the fastest I possibly could. And I burst through the bottom door, the bottom floor door, and I ran down the hallway towards the lobby. And when I ran into the lobby was completely empty. All the boys had checked in, all the fans had left, but there's a bar that was closed, and there was Jeff Jarrett and Owen Hart there. And I'm in the lobby looking around for this guy with the long, greasy hair. And I can't remember whether I asked Jeff or Owen, but one of those two, I looked over and said, hey, did you guys see a guy with long, greasy hair? And they're like, yeah, he just ran out that door. So I go running out the door. Now I'm out in the parking lot looking for this guy, and there's nobody. So I was like, damn, man, I was so mad. So I came back into the hotel, went back upstairs and crashed out. And I can't remember how much time expired. It was probably maybe 6 months. I'm assuming something like that. And I believe it was, we were at I think it was called a show Off the Record in Toronto, Canada, with Michael Landsberg.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it was. And Edge and I were scheduled for that show. And while we're sitting there getting ready, we're sitting in the studio in front of the camera, and we're getting ready to start this whole interview up. And he gets a text from Owen Hart, and it was something along the lines like, hey, okay, you can tell Val now. And this is like 6 months after the fact. And Edge leans over and says, hey, remember that day in St. Louis when you wanted just to kill that guy? And I was like, yeah. He goes, yeah, that was Owen. And I was like, right before I was going on to do this interview, I'm just like, oh. And it was infuriating right before I'm about to go live on this off the record show.
Did you ever watch that show back, and did you look for yourself like doing the Yosemite Sam, getting red with just like anger, like live on TV?
No, I think once I got into the interview, I kind of forgot about it until after the interview. As soon as they said cut, I was like, you got to tell me exactly what he texted you. But once I was in the interview, I kind of, just kind of forgot about it. But as soon as they said cut, that's when I turned around. I was like, tell me what he texted you, everything.
I hate to do this, but it sort of, obviously ties in with Owen. I hadn't quite realised that you wrestled straight after Owen's fall, or more or less on Over the Edge, and it was already a weird enough day because I know there was a fight between Steve Blackman and Bradshaw at the airport earlier, and just everything was just brewing that day and everything. But what did you know when you went out for the match?
So I knew he was gone at that point. It wasn't announced. I didn't expect him to be gone at that point. What happened was I was behind the curtain as Owen was getting ready to, be lowered down from the rafters, just do his thing. I was getting warmed up for my match with Jeff Jarrett. Now, Jarrett, I don't believe he wasn't in the gorilla position because I was there doing push-ups and squats and things, getting warmed up. Jeff, I believe, was back further in the building, getting ready to do some interview about the match coming up. And so I didn't know exactly where Jeff Jarrett was, but Jeff Jarrett was also one of Owen's best friends. And so I'm wrestling Owen's best friend here. And I remember as I'm doing Hindu squats, getting the blood pumping, it was Bruce Pritchard that jumped up out of the production desk and said, EMTs, somebody just fell from the rafters. Now, when he said that, I figured it's some drunk fan that got up into the rafters, was climbing up and fell. I didn't realize it was Owen. And I'm like, what the heck? And I just see Bruce freaking out. And then Bruce kind of calms back down and goes back to staring at the monitor. And then he puts his hands back in the air and flips out again and says, it's Owen. And I went, whoa, what? That's when it's kind of the shock comes over you. And then I remember looking as the EMTs went through the curtain, I remember pulling the curtain apart and looking out, and it was pretty far down, into the arena. So I couldn't really see what was going on. But when I heard Bruce say Owen fell from the rafters, I remember looking up to see how high that roof was. And I was like, oh, it's the worst looking up and realizing where he just fell from. But still, there's hope. There's always hope. And so everybody's in shock. Nobody believes that he's actually gone. It's not even really entering anybody's mind. But when they brought him on that gurney, they had a bunch of guys pushing the gurney. They had one of the EMTs on top of the gurney straddling Owen and giving him really hard chest compressions as he's being wheeled by me right in front of me. And his head was turned towards me and his eyes were wide open and he was looking right at me. And I don't know what it is, but it was the first time in my life that you could look at eyes that were open and know that's it. He's not there. I don't know what it is, but you can just tell there's something, there's not a shine in that eye. It's, you know, he's no longer there. And so I knew he wasn't there. I didn't need any doctor to come and say, hey, he didn't make it. I knew he didn't make it as soon as he wheeled by me. Jeff doesn't know he didn't make it. And Jeff is still in the back somewhere getting ready to cut a promo. And so now I'm thinking, okay, I don't know what I should do here, like knowing what I now know, what I feel anyway. And are they going to cancel this? Are we still really going to go out and do this show? I started questioning like in my own mind. But all I think about is, this is my friend that just got wheeled by me and he's lifeless. And then all of a sudden my music hits and I'm standing there going, oh, and I turned and I don't remember much of walking down to the ring other than as I was walking down, you can hear the fans, but I can't really register them because as I'm walking down, I'm just looking up going, oh my God, like this is real. This is really happening. And I knew Jeff still didn't know. And when we got in the ring, it was kind of a blur from there. We just came to the conclusion that, hey, let's just work through this and let's get find out what's happening with Owen after the fact. So we did the match. I don't really remember much of the match, man. Everything was about Owen at that point. You know, you couldn't get him out of your mind. And so it was a weird, really sad night. Like it's one of those things that's burned into my memory forever, the actual event, but the little details, like my match, I don't remember really wrestling inside that ring very much. I remember little things like looking at Jeff when he first got in the ring, wondering if someone's told him anything. You know what I mean? Our focus really wasn't on the match at all. Even though when we got into the match, I mean, you just fall into that groove. But I don't really remember much of it at all, the match itself.
Jeff Jarrett did know because he had to do a promo to camera very shortly before he left the ring, and then you could see he was absolutely devastated and crying, so he did know. There's one other thing, but I hate to answer for you, but some people say, should the show have carried on? No, of course it shouldn't. And yet it did. But I apologize for sort of bringing like a very heavy question so early on into the interview.
Oh, no, that's fine, yeah.
But
that's a part of my history right there, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll move on, and I'm going to ask you a few wrestling news things that have been in the last month or so, and there's probably about 4, and then we'll move on to your career. We'll ask some of the more fun questions. And CM Punk Meltdown, did you watch it? Any opinion? And for people who don't know, you had CM Punk's first WWE dark match, right?
Dark match, yeah. That match got him his job. And I didn't know CM Punk personally when we did that dark match, but I had heard his name around on the independents. You know, he was a good talent. At the time, I heard he was one of those guys that just goes out there and does all these different things, but never really put anything logical together in the match. You know, working a leg, working a body part, selling that body part, and really developing an in-ring story around that injured body part, as an example. And so he was, I guess, a pretty good friend of Steven Richards, and Steven and I were talking, and he was like, oh man, I'd really like him to get his job here. And I'm like, well, let's see what he can do. And so when he came in, I remember sitting down with him, I was saying, okay, Punk, listen, we're going to tell a story in this match. The story, when you come out there, the fans don't know who you are. They don't know who CM Punk is. They only know who Val Venis is. And so my goal was, we got to get the people to hate you. And so the goal was, since they don't know who he is, we're going to go out there and do a babyface match at first, you know, a tit for tat, you know, good wrestling, you know, 1-2 kick out, 1-2 kick out, 1-2 kick out, 1-2 kick out, square off, get that applause. And so we did that. And then as we get that applause, as we're squared off after a couple of false, 1-2s and, get the shoulder off the mat. And now we're squared off. We get the applause. Everybody's cheering. They like what they see, even though they still don't know who CM Punk is. And they have no emotional investment into him. I'm looking at him. I get the applause. And then I start going, all right, all right. And I start turning my back to CM Punk to get the fans going, like, let's get this match going. And as I turn my back to him, CM Punk chop blocks out the back of my knee. And instantly the entire arena went, boo! They cared about CM Punk now. They developed an instant hatred for this man that just cheap shot, chop blocked out Val Venis's knee. They didn't know who CM Punk was before. They didn't care, but now they care. And so just the very simple, we went right back to the basics. And then when he chop block out my knee, there's no opportunity for CM Punk to start going off and doing all this high-flying, high-spot stuff. Now he's got to tell a story. I'm going to do my part selling my knee. He's got to do his part putting the heat on the knee. And one thing I will say, I'm a big fan of storytelling within the match itself. And when I'm telling guys like, hey, work my knee or work my back or work my arm, one thing I noticed over the years that there were some guys, more than just a few, that really didn't have a huge repertoire for one body part. The thing was with CM Punk, he had a good repertoire. When I said, okay, work my leg on this is what this match story is going to be about. It's about you taking out my leg with a cheap shot and taking advantage of that and me having to overcome your cheap shot in the end of the, as we go into the finish. And, I was a little worried that he was going to be one of those guys that really, I tell him to work my leg and he really doesn't have a whole lot, might drop an elbow, twist it up a little bit, but really not a fluid one move to the leg to another to a hold, you know what I mean? And I was pleasantly surprised. He had a really good repertoire. I didn't need to really say much. He stayed focused on my knee. We really told that story. And the storytelling of that match got us into a talent meeting the next week at TV where they used the match I had with CM Punk, and it was Johnny Ace and Triple H that were telling all the other talent, hey, this is how you build a guy up that the fans don't know before you beat him. And so they used CM Punk in our match for that demonstration in the talent meeting, and CM Punk got hired off that match.
There you go.
And so, yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. He was one of the guys that, like I said, he had a good repertoire for working a body part. He's an intelligent guy, because there are some guys that when I describe, hey, we're going to take away all that high flying stuff and really focus on storytelling on you taking out my arm, and we're going to work that the whole match. There are some guys that, even though they kind of get the concept of that storytelling piece inside, your performance, they really don't have it in their head that that is the story. CM Punk understood going into that match, okay, I'm going to work his leg and I'm going to do everything I can to really, turn it up. And that leg is going to become laser focused, my target. And he did a great job at it. And he got him his job. And I truly believe if CM Punk went out there and just did his normal indie stuff that he would do anyways, I don't think he would have been hired at all. I think changing that pace and telling a story is what got him hired.
Did you see the press conference Meltdown a couple of weeks ago?
Yes. So I was doing cardio and it came across my YouTube feed, and it was one of those things where I guess I came to the conclusion after hearing it that if it was a work, genius. If it's not a work, shame on CM Punk. It was Shane Douglas brought up a really, really good point. And the point was he had just won the AEW world title. And in pro wrestling, especially when you have the company owner sitting right beside you and you have that world title on the other side of you and you just won it, nothing else should matter. The champagne should be, popping. The belt should be glorified, and that should be everything you've ever wanted. You finally achieved that dream, whether it's, for a second time, a third time, it doesn't matter. That belt should be the epitome of the company. It's what everybody strives for. But instead, CM Punk went out there, put the belt there. And it's unfortunate that I have to speak about Colt Cabana. And it's like, dude, you just won the world title. You got the company owner sitting next to you, and you're treating the belt like your little childish feud with another pro wrestler is the most important thing in the world when you just won the AEW world title. And it didn't make any sense to me. And I was like, okay, unless this is a work for some storyline that is going to justify not acknowledging the world title, the championship, the epitome of the business. It's what everybody strives for. This better be a really good storyline, because to me, that was shame on CM Punk if that was a shoot. If it was a work, I hope there's a good payoff, because I think shunning that title like that for a childish little feud between wrestlers doesn't do the company any favors at all. And I mean, you look at Ric Flair, every time he won that title, champagne was popping, the girls were flowing. I mean, it was time to celebrate. That he got the epitome of the business in that gold belt right there. And yeah, I was a little disappointed to see. I'm really still hoping that it was a work and that there'll be a huge payoff. But as the days go by, that hope is dwindling.
Yeah. It's even worse with Tony Khan, wide-eyed and nodding along as he's trashing people in his own company. Astonishing. Yeah. It was amazing to me. If you got problems with the guys, you get them in the back locker room and you hash it out in the back locker room. It's to take it out in public and just shun the fact that you just achieved another world championship. Completely ignore that fact. Okay, so I guess becoming world champion really ain't all that important anymore. Instead, it's the backstage drama that's important. How do you put backstage drama over winning the world title? I don't know, but CM Punk did it successfully, so or that's yet to be seen, I guess. We did it.
He did it. Yeah, that's more accurate. Yeah, he did it.
We'll move on then. And did you see Ric Flair's last match?
I did. I love that guy. Ric Flair to me he's just an amazing talent, amazing person, amazing character. I don't know. I'm glad he got out there, and I think it was somewhat nostalgic, but he just can't perform like he did before. And I think to leave that as the last match, it's not, to me, it's not all that big of a deal, but you have such a tremendous career. To end it on that note, I think I don't really know what to think about it, actually, to tell you the truth. It's one of those things where I don't know what position I should take on the last match. I think I want to take the position that, I really shouldn't have ended like that, but it is what it is. I mean, at the same time, at his age, wanting to get in there, you could give him props for that. The fact that he still doesn't want to stop, that's admirable on one's hand, but I think on the other hand, you got to use some common sense and go, that's a dangerous thing to do right there. I was worried for him. I was really worried for him. And then I don't know whether it's true or not, because I haven't had the opportunity to ask him as of yet. But from what I heard is he passed out in the match at some point.
The thing that he said was that he passed out twice and then he tried to claim dehydration, but then I believe he also claimed that he was drinking most of the day before the match.
It doesn't surprise me one bit. It doesn't surprise me one bit. I'll give you a quick Ric Flair story.
Oh, please.
So there was 5 or 6 of us that were being sent by WWE over to the Middle East. So we were going to go to Qatar and we're going to go to Djibouti, Africa. And it was just like an ambassadorship to sign autographs for the military at the military bases and whatnot. So there was me, Benoit, Shane Helms, Trish Stratus. I think Lita was there as well. And we were all flying from home. And I believe it was either Atlanta or Charlotte. I think it was, maybe it was Charlotte. I can't, one of those two cities. We were all flying into from our homes. And then we were all going to get on the same plane and fly, I believe, to Rome and then Rome to Qatar, right? And so we all flew into Atlanta. And I remember sitting at the gate and Benoit comes in and Trish Stratus and Shane, they're all coming in there. And we're all sitting at the gate, but there's no Flair. And, you know, we're just talking amongst each other. You guys ready for this tour? You know, blah, blah, blah. And then down the hallway of the airport, all we hear is, woo! And we all look up and go, is that Nate? And sure enough, as we're all looking down, we see this guy. I don't know how he got a dolly past security. He's got to know somebody in the airport. I don't know how this happened. But he's pulling his roller bag with one hand and pushing a dolly with the other hand. And it had 3 big boxes on this dolly. And we're all looking, going, what the heck is Nate doing? And he's walking right towards our gate. And as he comes up to our gate, he's like, all right, guys, we're ready for the trip. I need y'all to take one of these bottles of wine and stick it in any free space in your carry-ons you got. 3 boxes full of wine bottles on a dolly through security inside the airport. We were just like flabbergasted. So are you serious? You want us to unpack all these boxes, take the bottles and stick them in our bags? And he was like, we got to bring all this stuff with us. So we're pulling all these wine bottles out of the boxes, and I'm cramming my roller bag full and cramming my knapsack full. It's already got stuff in it. I can only fit a few here and there. So between all of us, we got all the bottles in all of our bags. Now our bags are like 1,000 pounds each. It's ridiculous. But at least we're at the gate. We just got to carry it from the seat onto the plane, and we're in the system at that point. We don't got to carry all this weight. Well, about 5 minutes before the doors were supposed to open, we have a gate change. And it's not just down the hall to the next gate. It's on the other side of the airport. By the time we all carry our roller bags and our knapsacks to the next gate, we're completely drenched in sweat. Just disgusting. And then we get on the plane. We fly to Rome, fly to Qatar. And the second we landed in Qatar, guess what Customs did? Confiscated every bottle of wine we brought in there. And Nate was flipping out. I thought he was going to get us arrested in the Middle East. He was flipping out. They were taking his wine bottles. But he made us carry those wine bottles all the way to Qatar only to get them confiscated. Because you can't bring that stuff into Qatar, you know? Oh, man. Friggin' Nate, I'll tell you.
I was going to say, like I just said, I've just come back from Turkey, right? And they had, in the airport, 3 separate bag checks. Like, not just one, 3 separate ones. And that's like, if there is one, a moderate Muslim country. And they were on it like nobody's business. They were swiping my iPad for looking for drugs, traces, just the whole bit.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And
that's intense.
I bought that iPad from a friend of mine as well. And I know for a fact he was chopping up something on it. You know what I'm saying? I was like, thank goodness I had the wherewithal to clean it properly first. You know?
Yeah. You get some of that residue on there and they catch it, man. They can ham you up for a long, long time.
That is 10 years in the hottest Turkish prison they can find for you, let me tell you.
Yeah, that wouldn't be any fun, brother. That wouldn't be any fun.
I will move on then. We can't really do the news without sort of bringing up that Vince McMahon is now gone. He's been ousted from his own company at 76, 77. Suppose what Vince McMahon meant to you throughout your career. Did you develop any real relationship with him over the years? You were there 10 years.
Yeah, no, it was just a business relationship. You know, for me, he was the owner of the company. I was providing, you know, him a service of entertainment that he needs people to go out there and entertain. And that's what I did for a long, long time. So we had a business deal together for 10 years. But other than that, it was, I admire Vince. I admire Vince because to me, I'm a huge fan of the free market. I'm a huge fan of human beings creating things that make other human beings' lives better. And I think Vince to me, that's the epitome of what it means to, I guess, nostalgically, you could say that's the epitome of what it means to be American. But to me, ultimately, it's what it really means to be a productive, useful human being with our time that we're granted on this planet, this rock flying through space. And Vince, he was a machine. He was a creative machine. He set goals. And one thing I really loved about, and I learned a lot from Vince, was watching him set goals. And he didn't let anything distract him in his drive to achieve those goals. And there, I saw distractions being thrown at him left, right, and center. And he would take those distractions and turn them into something that was creative, that created value in our world, and gave the fans what they wanted, needed, and desired, and that was to be entertained. Even, I mean, you take a look at the, are you familiar with the lawsuit between World Wrestling Federation and the World Wildlife Fund?
Absolutely, I am, yeah. Over
the initials. Now, I thought, you know, I grew up with WWF, so when they lost that court case, in my mind, being, this is the power of human conditioning for human minds, when they lost that court case and they dropped that F and they put the E, I was like, okay, this is the end of professional wrestling. You can't have, it doesn't sound right. World Wrestling Entertainment. It sounds right now because I've been indoctrinated with WWE now. But prior to that, it's World Wrestling Federation. World Wrestling Entertainment doesn't sound right. And that's the power of indoctrination in human minds. But when I saw Vince lose that case, and I was like, oh, man, that sucks, because now how do you call World Wrestling Federation World Wrestling Entertainment? That just doesn't make any sense. And then the very next TV, I come to work, and Vince already has T-shirts made up that says, get the F out. It was genius. He literally turned a loss in a lawsuit to cash. And that's value being created, because now the fans go out and they want that shirt. You know what I mean? So when I saw him take negative things that were thrown into his path and just turn that ball of negativity into something that's going to create real value for fans, that's genius to me. And that's admirable. I admired that skill and that idea that, yeah, that's a negative ball being thrown in my court, but watch me turn that negative ball into real value. And in this case, that value turns into cashola, scratch. And I don't know, I admire that. I admire that because, let's face it, a lot of normal people would take a negative ball like that thrown at them, and it's like it hits them right in the solar plexus, and they just keel over. Oh, that one hurt. I don't know what I'm going to do. Vince didn't even think about it. Boom, make a T-shirt, get the F out. But it was to me, that's admirable. That's such a tremendous trait for a human being to have, that you learn from it and you try to adapt that into your own life. And when you're setting your own goals, whenever something's negative being thrown into my path as I'm trying to achieve those goals, I always remember Vince taking that negative ball of, you just lost this lawsuit, and turning it into cashola. And so, yeah, I always admired him. But other than learning from him and just doing business with him, I never hung out with him. I never went out and drank or anything like that with him or anything, you know, other than just at work. We talked storylines. We go over a couple of different things we were going to do for long-term storylines. Other than that, that was the end of our relationship at that point. It was just strictly business.
Well, I'm going to move on now to finally your career. And I want to stress here that we have reached about 1/3 of one page of 7 pages of questions I wrote for you. So I'm going to have to really stop over preparing like this to save my own time at some point. But certainly I'm going to have to skip over quite a few questions. But this one I won't skip over because I learnt today, and in fact I'll ask the person who asked this. Sunview asked Sean about his time wrestling in England in 1994 for All-Star Wrestling. So how did you get the opportunity, and were you doing the Butlins tours?
Yes, I did the Butlins tours. A lot of fun. So what happened was when I was in Canada, I was training under Dewey Robertson and his son Jason Robertson. Jason was mostly responsible for any of the technical stuff in wrestling, but his dad would really bring out character. And so it was kind of a tag team school, basically. There, I was getting taught by both the father and the son, and it was really great. I met Shane Sewell in Toronto, Canada, and he was starting around the same time I was. I believe he was training with Ron Hutchinson and Sweet Daddy Siki at the time in Toronto. And so I met him at a show and really hit it off, and we became a tag team. Now, he had already done a short tour with Brian Dixon's organization over in the UK. And so it was one of those things, hey, he called up Brian, and next thing you know, I'm on a plane ride that we're going over there as a tag team called the Canadian Glamour Boys. And so I went over with my partner, Shane. Eventually, something happened back in Canada, and Shane had to fly back to Canada. So they had me as a singles there, and they called me Scott Borders. And so we were doing Butlins camps. I started there, I guess, right at the beginning of summer. And I was doing the Butlins camps most of the time during the summer. But there were times where you do the Butlins camps in the afternoon, and then you would go and do a town show in the evening. So there were several times where you're working twice a day. So the thing was with England, I was working every day, sometimes twice a day, and I was learning a real technical style over there of wrestling that I wasn't used to from what I had already learned in Canada. So it was another style that I was excited to learn. And it was the fact that I was working literally every single day, which a lot of guys don't have those opportunities anymore when they're coming up, first breaking into the business. And so I think that was something that really helped me learn the craft quickly. Was working every single day in England, and it was such a tremendous time. Those Butlins camps, I lost a lot of brain cells at those Butlins camps over the years. Let me tell you, those Butlins camps are something else. Are they still a big thing over there?
There's still a thing here. There's Butlins, there's Pontins, there's a couple of different ones that still operate, but yeah, they're doing another great big drive on television advertising to appeal to more people again, especially because with all the lockdowns and everything, that's when they seize the opportunity to, do a staycation kind of thing. So it was a good idea for them.
Sure. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, that would be one, especially when you come out the other end of COVID, everybody wants to get out and go stay at a Butlins camps and just party it up and rides and shows. And who was main eventing those shows generally? Because there's a couple of names that I saw that you'd wrestled with or against, like Doc Dean and Robbie Brookside, those guys. But who was the main event? Who was the draw? I think, if I remember correctly, there was always Dave Taylor, Danny Collins. Danny Collins, to me, Doc Dean especially. Doc Dean I really hit it off with Doc Dean, really well. Doc Dean and I became really good friends. He was the guy that I kind of latched on to there, and he taught me a lot about, European style wrestling. And so that was the main guy that I really connected with was Doc Dean. But on top, I think you had a guy named Skull. Skull was over there at the time. Dave Taylor was on top of the card. Tony St. Clair, when I first got there, was at the top of the card on a few shows, but he left Germany. And after he left, so I only was there for a short period of time while he was there as well. And then he left to Germany. I didn't see him the rest of the tour that I was in England. But then I went over to Ireland. I went on a tour to Ireland with, what was the promoter's name? I haven't mentioned his name in years, and it's right on the tip of my tongue, but it started with an O. He passed away several years ago.
Not one I know.
I can't. If I'm not thinking about it, I'll remember the name. But I did some shots for him, and there was Drew McIntyre over there. Not the Drew McIntyre that's in WWE right now. This was Drew McIntyre. He was in England. He was a huge name over there for a long, long, long time. And he used to come out with a bow tie and black trunks, and just his character was just a greasy slime ball, basically. And so he was always on top over there as well. But I would say like people like Dave Taylor, Fit Finley was on top over there for a short period of time. He did most of his stuff while I was there in Germany as well. But Danny Collins, were you familiar with Danny Collins?
I know the name. I don't think I could put a face to it.
So when I was over there, I looked at Danny Collins as the veteran that was probably the most talented of the veterans. And he was the guy that he was a smaller guy, but man, that guy could wrestle. And I had the opportunity to get in the ring with him a few times over there. And just how smooth the match was, it was that I think wrestling Danny Collins was the first time I ever got in the ring with a guy that was on a completely new level that I never experienced before. And Doc Dean was kind of on that level as well. But with Doc Dean, he was just more or less, he took me under his wing and was really teaching me the technical aspects. Whereas Danny Collins would take those technical aspects and create something that had the fans, for the first time in my career, emotionally invested into the match, where they were like jumping out of their seats if I got my shoulder off the mat before that count of 3. That's when I really felt for the very first time an emotional connection with the fans, really connected to what was happening in the ring.
Did you, very quick answer, but British wrestling this is before my time, sadly, is quite well known for the audience full of old grannies swinging handbags at the bad guy wrestlers. Was that the same in the 90s, or was it, families and kids, that kind of thing?
So when I was there in the 90s, it was more families and kids, especially at the Butlins camps. But there was a town called Hastings. Let me tell you about the town called Hastings. So back then, I don't know whether it's developed now, but back then it was more of a very small rural town, I guess. And when I first went to, I did multiple shows in my time in the UK in that town called Hastings. But the first time we were traveling to Hastings, the boys were telling me all the stories. I heard stories of, a female wrestler throwing her opponent outside the ring. And when she came out of the ring to get her, she bent over to pick her up, so her butt was facing the audience. And some farmer jumped up with a needle, stuck it in her ass, and pumped hoof and mouth medicine right into her ass. And when you're hearing these stories driving to that town and you can't escape the car, you're like, y'all take me where?
What did you get injected with then in the end?
So they say it was hoof and mouth medicine.
Oh, no. Did you get a jab or?
No, I'm sorry. I thought you were asking what did that female wrestler get injected with? No, I never got injected. But I did have stuff thrown at me. I had bags swung at me in that town. There was a different breed of people down in Hastings, that's for sure. And that was the one town. And, it seems like no matter which country I went to, there was always that one town that was just a little bit different, just a little bit. And Hastings was that town in the UK for me.
Well, they apparently never got over the Battle of Hastings, then, it seems. We will move on. Just before we get to the WWF, we've got Japan. We could talk about Puerto Rico. We could talk about the Revived Stampede. We could talk about. We won't with any of those today. I'm going to stick with CMLL. How did you? To be honest, I mean, the real question is, how did you end up becoming CMLL's world's youngest champion?
So when I was wrestling in Puerto Rico, Victor Quinones he lived in Puerto Rico, and Victor Quinones was working the Japan companies and working with the Mexican companies as well. And so I guess Paco Alonso had mentioned to Victor Quinones, hey, do you know anybody that wants to wear this mask? And it was a steel. It looked like steel on your face. It was a very cool mask. And Paco Alonso, from what I understand, was telling Victor Quinones, hey, I'm looking for somebody that's going to be, have a good physique, is going to be able to work really well and wear this mask because I want to do something with this mask. And at the time, Victor came back to Puerto Rico and he said, hey, I think you might work well with this mask. What do you think? And I remember having a discussion with Victor that, hey, I've been tagging with Shane for a lot of years now. I would prefer to go to Mexico as a tag team and continue this whole Canadian Glamour Boy thing. And just because it was working, and at the time I didn't want to, it wasn't that I didn't want to. I wanted to keep the Canadian Glamour Boy thing going because it was still making us money. It was still working. Why, let's ride the wheels off this thing. But then when I approached my partner, Shane, and I said, hey, do you want to maybe take a tag deal over to Mexico, see if we can get Victor to maybe get us in Mexico? And Shane didn't want to leave Puerto Rico. He fell in love with Puerto Rico. And I totally understood why. I love Puerto Rico too, but I really wanted to change. I've been in Puerto Rico for a long time at that point. And he wanted to stay there. And I was, okay, how can we do this? Like, if you want to stay here, I want to go to Mexico. Let's do something here in Puerto Rico where we split up the tag team. So I agreed to wear the steel mask in Mexico. I went to Victor and I said, hey, listen, if that steel mask's still available, I'll go over there as a singles. I just need a little bit of time for Shane and I to do our angle so we can drop the tag titles, do the separation, work it into a loser leaves town match. And we figured about 6 weeks of TV would be fine for that. And sure enough, Paco was fine with that. He gave us 6 weeks. Carlos in Puerto Rico was fine with that. So we, a couple of times on TV, we did the missteps where I caused us to lose. We end up losing the title. Then Shane and I butt heads over losing the title. We do a big blow-off match. Loser leaves town. And, of course, I lose. Shane stays there, and I become Steel in Mexico. And so that's how we did it. It was through Victor Quinones. And the thing I really liked about it was the promoters were all, yes, that's a good idea. Write yourself off of TV in Puerto Rico and then come here and start. It wasn't like Paco Alonso saying, nope, you have to go quit Puerto Rico and wear this tomorrow. They were very open to, yes, let's do this, but can I have time to finish this up first? Because you always, like, for me, I was kind of come up in that old school era where when you start a story, you want to see it through to its end, get that big pop, blow off match, and, move on from that point. And the fact that both Carlos and Paco Alonso were more than willing to do that without any resistance whatsoever was, I guess, what I would consider a gem, because I didn't expect it. It was like, thank God I don't got to worry about promoters fighting each other over it. Because, for me, just to say, okay, I quit here out of the blue, doesn't sit right with me. So from some promoters can really work in the business and really make things happen no matter where it is you're working.
I expect that probably worked in your favor eventually. If they're going to put the world title on you, well, he's obviously not just going to walk off if he gets a better offer somewhere. So that'd be a fantastic feather in your cap to sort of become world champion. Going to Mexico from Puerto Rico, did you have like any kind of introduction to Lucha Libre before you got to Mexico? And how much of a mind mess was that to have to work the other side and all the roles?
Yeah, so the whole idea, like, I watched Lucha Libre on TV and stuff. And when I watched Lucha Libre, I wasn't so much a fan of it. I was a fan for what they could do. It was spectacular. To me, it was like a gymnastics show. But there were things in there, and it's still even true today. There are things in there that there are moves that these guys do that are spectacular, and they make no sense. And that is something that is just, it's in the culture of wrestling down there. And it's just the way it is. I come from really that old school era of storytelling. I want to be able to tell that story in the ring. I want to get that emotional connection with the fans. Now, there were a couple of wrestlers in Mexico that understood the power of creating that emotional connection with fans. Rayo de Jalisco Jr. was one of those guys that understood that connection. Let's face it, Rayo was never a great wrestler. But he did make an emotional connection with the fans, which is what got him over as big as he got over. And he understood that was his MO. Whereas the majority of Mexican wrestlers are there for the pop and the ooh, ah. And so when I went down there, I was going to stick to what's been working for me all prior to getting to Mexico, and that was creating an emotional connection with the fans. So when the Mexican wrestlers are saying they want to go bing, boom, bang, bing, fly here, fly there, catch me here, I was like, you guys do the flying, I'll do the catching. But there were simple little things like and it's so common over there. if I get, let's say I get clotheslined over the top rope to the outside, and as I'm feeding up on the outside, I'm expecting a tope is what's coming. I'm expecting the guy to be running, hitting those ropes as I'm standing up. So when I finally stand straight up, there he is making that connection. It doesn't work like that in Mexico. They literally stand in the middle of the ring and watch you stand up. And once you stand up and then face them, then they set off and run and hit the ropes. So I'm standing there watching this guy run all the way across the ring that way, all the way back across the ring, and he's going to tope me, and now I'm going to catch him. Like, logic would say, move. And so the one thing I was telling the guys that wanted to throw the tope inside the ring was, hey guys, as I'm feeding up, I'll have you at the corner of my eye and I'll time it. You just run. And as soon as I run and turn, I'll time it just as you're coming through the ropes to catch you. And the very first time that I was going, this is like my second match there, I think it was, and one of the guys, it was a 6-man, and one of the guys wanted to throw the tope. And sure enough, I'm standing up slow as I'm, on the floor, and I'm kind of looking out the corner of my eye, and he's standing in the middle of the ring looking at me. And I'm like, run. Like, don't stand there. I'm thinking this in my head. Like, why isn't he running? And then as I stand up, and now I'm trying to get up as slow as I can, waiting for him to run, and he still ain't running. And I stand right straight up, and I turn, and I look at him, and now he's looking at me in the middle of the ring, and now he goes and runs. So I walk away. And as he hits the ropes, and he can see clearly I'm walking away, so then he comes and hits his chest on the ropes and walks backwards into the ring, and I get back in the ring, and we just continue on. When we get backstage, he goes, amigo, why you don't take the tope? And I'm like, amigo, why you stand there and make me look like a dumbass watching you run across the ring? But it's so normal for them to do that there. And I didn't want any part of that. So I told him, I said, dude, if you're going to throw that tope, I'm not going to stand there and watch you run and come at me with the tope. Just do it. I promise you I'll catch you. And the very next night, we were doing the same match in a different town. And this time he ran, but it was the first time he ran without having the acknowledgement that the guy was going to actually stand there and catch him. He just relied on trusting that I said I would turn and catch you as you fly. And he did it. And he said he was scared. He was scared out of his mind as he's running, because he kept thinking, I hope he turns around. I hope he turns around. And as he flew through the ropes, there I was. And so he caught on to it right after he did it for the first time with me that way. But that's, I went in there not to change anything, because they got their own style, but I was going to keep doing the style. I was going to take their style and adopt it to my style, because that emotional connection with the fans was vitally important. And I think we made that emotional connection quick enough that Paco Alonso said, I need to put you with Raul de Jalisco. And he put me right on top after the first few matches. And it was because I focused on creating that emotional connection with the fans, rather than just doing something spectacular that made no sense whatsoever, but got an applause because it looked cool. You know what I mean? And I think that's the big difference. The guys on top in Mexico worked for that emotional connection. And a lot of the guys that are wondering how to get to the top don't even know what an emotional connection is the way I feel about Mexican wrestling.
Especially because a lot of the times they're wrestling for tourists who are just going to be in and out and actually not following the storylines, like Mexico City every week and that kind of thing. There was something you mentioned beforehand, and I want to pick up on it. You and Chainsaw were the Glamour Boys, Pretty Boy tag team in Puerto Rico. And at the same time, there was another Canadian duo doing fairly similar thing, and it was Don Callis and Rick Martel as the Supermodels. Did you ever have some a battle?
Really?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, on the Indies and the Canadian Indies, they were doing something pretty similar.
Don Callis and Rick Martel, right? Wow, I had no idea. This is the first time hearing of that. I had no idea they did a similar thing up in Canada.
Yeah,
interesting.
I think I don't know if it was WWF or WCW was going to give them a run or whatever. But and then Don Callis goes to the WWF, of course, and isn't a supermodel anymore. But speaking of
interesting, that's an interesting little fact. I had no idea.
Well, I was going to ask if you'd sort of taken the idea from them, if they'd taken the idea from, well, maybe Rick the Model Martel, Isn't a playoff just
no, it was actually Shane Sewell when we were both training and doing a couple of independent shots when we first broke into the business in Toronto. Shane was one of those guys. Shane Sewell's a business guy, always has been. It's a funny little thing here. Before I ever met Shane in pro wrestling, our high school, Markham District High School, played Northern High School in football, and he went to Northern, and I went, and this was in the finals too, one year, and he was going to Northern, and I was going to Markham, and I didn't know that until several years after I started tagging with Shane, and we're down in Puerto Rico, and he's wearing a Northern High School T-shirt that I think it was 1988, I think it was, and I'm looking at it going, bro, where'd you get that T-shirt? And he's like, that's the school I went to in Toronto. And I go, 88, we played, you dumbasses. And so sure enough, we played each other before we even met. So with Shane was always that business guy that was, when I first met him, he always had a business, never had a job. He had a student moving company that he worked on the weekends. And so while we were kind of tag teaming at the very beginning of our career, we were earning money by helping people move. And so he had a big moving truck, and, I guess he bought it when he was 16 years old, So he's one of those guys. He's just a grinder. He just grinds and, just looking to make money. We were in the moving truck one day. We had to take a guy's apartment for about a 2-hour drive to another town. And we're talking about all these different things in wrestling. Hadn't created the Canadian Glamour Boy tag team yet. I was just, still Sean Morley, and he was still just Shane Sewell. And we were thinking up names, and he heard this song, and it was something like, at the time, I never heard the song before. And it was the Glamour Boys, they like to party. It was an old school song. That was the first time I ever heard it, but Shane loved it. And he was like, Glamour Boys, Canadian Glamour Boys. As he's driving the moving truck, he's saying this out loud, like you can hear his brain turning. And I go, did you say Canadian Glamour Boys? And he's like, yeah. And I go, that sounds like a pretty cool tag name. And he's like, yeah. And then we could use the song, the Glamour Boys, they like to party. And I'm like, there's a song that says Glamour Boys. And he let me listen to it, and I was like, bro, let's do this. And that's really where it came up. But we're in a moving truck, moving a customer from one apartment to another, and it was just something Shane came up with. And then the whole tassels coming off the arms and tassels off the boots, that all came later as we, continue to develop it. But yeah, it came out of Shane's mind, right, as we're in the moving truck early in our career.
Okay, sorry, slight break there, and we're back. And this must be the longest interview you've ever done, Sean, without me mentioning Val Venis, basically. We're almost an hour in. I've not even brought up Val Venis once yet. But how did you come to the attention of the WWF? Is it through CMLL or some other way?
So, ultimately, it was through Victor Quinones. Bruce Pritchard was, I guess, head of talent relations at the time in WWF. And Bruce had come down to Mexico City with Victor Quinones to take a look at the talent in Mexico. And I guess they were going to try and work out a deal, bring up some Mexican talent into WWF at the time. And they were looking at...
Was this Super Astros? I'm sorry to interrupt. Was this for the Super Astros show that they were looking to do?
That came a little bit after our first meetings. Like that, I was already in WWE when they came out with Astros. But this was the first meeting where Bruce Pritchard and Paco Alonso would really have any kind of discussions whatsoever. And so what happened is Bruce had talked to Victor Quinones. They worked out a deal where I would come up for a tryout. He had seen some video of my work, really liked it. And so they flew me out to Des Moines, Iowa to do a tryout match in front of Vince. And so I did a dark match, and I believe it was Henry Godwin that I worked. And so we literally flew in from Mexico City into Des Moines, Iowa. I did the dark match, and I had to fly right back to Mexico City to continue working. And I went back to Mexico City, and a few weeks later, Bruce Pritchard comes down with Victor Quinones and to work out a deal with Paco Alonso for some Mexican talent, but he also wanted to come down and have some discussions with me as well. So we all went out for dinner. And that's really where, you know, they started with the drinking and the food, and the discussion started flowing. And out of those discussions, I guess a deal was solidified between Paco Alonso and Bruce Pritchard for some Mexican talent to come in and out of WWE at the time. And it was shortly after that, probably, I don't know, maybe a couple of months after that, that I went up to WWE TV studio. Edge was there for that first camp they did. Edge was there. There was a bunch of guys were there. And so we went there, spent 2 weeks just training there, and I ended up signing the contract. But I still had about 6 months left in Mexico. And this goes back the same deal. When I went from Puerto Rico to Mexico, Vince and Paco Alonso, you know, I was getting 2 paychecks for the first 6 months. I was getting WWE paycheck. And the only thing with me that was airing in WWE program were the vignettes that were playing for weeks on end, yet only took me 2 days to film. So while every week they were playing a new vignette, I'm still wrestling in Mexico, running away from Raul de Jalisco Jr. And so it was fantastic getting 2 paychecks and, you know, working one territory. And
with the paychecks, wow. I'm sorry to interrupt again. With the paychecks, now, was this WWF, was this just a retainer, or had they signed you to a downside guarantee proper contract?
Downside guarantee.
Right.
Yeah, downside guarantee at that point. So even though I was getting the downside weekly check because I wasn't working for WWE at the time, I still was wrestling in Mexico. But I was getting, you know, that downside weekly guarantee on top of what I was getting paid in Mexico. You know, I was pretty happy about that. And so anyways, I finished up in Mexico. And while I was in Mexico is when Vince Russo came up with the Val Venis character. And so they called me at 7 o'clock in the morning, Vince Russo and Vince McMahon. It was 7 in the morning, Mexico City time. So I'm guessing it was about 9 or 10 in the Northeast, up in New York, Connecticut area. And he calls me and Vince says, "Hey, we got this character. His name's Val Venis, and the last name is spelled Venis." Now, when he spelled out the last name for me, I'm kind of thinking it's a weird name, weird way to spell Venus, but whatever. And then he says, "Now, Val Venis was a former film star turned pro wrestler." And the first thing that pops into my head is Jesse Ventura, Hollywood Hogan. You know, this stuff's already been done. You know what I mean? Like, we're just going to rehash a Jesse Ventura thing. Like, that just wasn't going to, that's not something I was willing to really, I mean, I was willing to really take anything they're going to pay me to do, but I wanted something that's going to entertain the fans in a new and different way. And so it just didn't sit right with me. But then a few seconds after he had mentioned that Val Venis was a former film star turned pro wrestler, he goes, "Actually, Val Venis was a former adult film star turned pro wrestler." And I went, "Okay, now that's never been done." And of course the wheels start turning, right? And I'm thinking, oh, and I'm a young guy and I'm single at the time. And I'm thinking, oh man, I'm going to get to work with all these hot girls and everything. And so I'm like, "I'm in, Vince. You don't got to twist my arm, bro. I'll do that character. No problem." And so Vince McMahon's like, "Well, hold on here. At least think about it for 24 hours. And he goes into explaining why. He goes, "I need to explain to you why. I want you to feel totally comfortable with the character, because if you don't feel comfortable, the fans aren't going to buy it. You know, if the fans aren't going to buy it, nobody's making money." And that made total sense to me, of course. And I'm like, all right, this is kind of a knee-jerk reaction. You know, yeah, I'll do that. Let me think about this for 24 hours. But 24 hours later, I was still like, yeah, I'm in. I thought about it 24 hours, longest 24 hours of my life. I'm in.
I want to ask you this, actually. So with the character itself and how it was going to be portrayed, how much credit does Vince Russo get? How much credit does Bruce Pritchard get? And how much did you put into the character as well?
Well, so the character itself was a very general character, and it really came out of the mind of Vince Russo, who presented it to Vince, the basic idea. And then between those two, they came up with, okay, let's make this guy as the former adult film star turned pro wrestler. He had long curly, hair and just jacked and looked good. The hello ladies and the towel were something that were added to the character during the vignettes time. So the very first vignette we did, there was no inkling of a towel that being worn down at the ring. There was no inkling of hello ladies being the catchphrase. We only had the basic idea of what the character was. The very first vignette that we did, we were in the WWE television studios. I was in the shower. They had, in the change room in the television studio, they had a bunch of showers and stuff. And so we're in the shower, and I'm in there with two score girls. And the vignette called for me to open the sliding door in the shower, step out, grab the towel off the rack, wrap it around my waist, and then go, hello, ladies. And so we did that first promo, and it started out with hello, ladies, because it was written into the script by Vince Russo. But no one ever considered this a catch line at this point. And so we recorded that vignette, and then when we went out to rewatch it back on the monitor to see how it came out, I saw me pick up the towel, and I go, towel. I said, Vince, you ever thought about maybe having me wear the towel down to the ring? No one's ever worn a towel wrapped around their waist if they just got out of a shower. And that was just something that I was watching it back, getting out of the shower. Well, why not just wear that down to the ring as well? No one's done that. And it was instant. Yes, that's good. Let's add that. It was just things that were happening along the lines like, hey, that's a good idea. Let's add that. And then when we went into the second vignette, it didn't have hello, ladies as the opening line. And Vince Russo, I think it was either Vince Russo or one of his production crew guys. I can't remember. I remember laying down on the couch with my hands behind my head, and this monitor is going on, and I'm supposed to be like, oh yeah, it's so great watching this monitor. But it had me looking at the monitor going, oh, this is so great, as the camera's panning out. And now it sees me on the couch, my hands behind my back, watching the monitor of myself performing, just putting myself over. And then when I turn to the camera, I'm supposed to start cutting a promo and I'm coming to WWE. But just as we were getting ready to do that, it was either Vince or one of the guys that was next to him had said, hey, when you turn to the camera, do that same hello ladies line. And immediately I clicked, this should just be a tagline. Like, we should just do this with every vignette. And sure enough, on that second vignette, when I'm like, oh, I'm so good. Oh, I did that so well. And then I turn to the camera and I go, hello, ladies. And we watch that one back. That's the second time that we've opened up the vignette with hello, ladies. And it just instantly clicked. Let's just do that as an opening to every joke, you know? And so things were developed step by step as we were creating video content for the character.
Whose garden was the Jenna Jameson vignette filmed in?
That was Bruce Pritchard's house. Yeah, that was Bruce Pritchard's house. Now, from what I understand, you know, his wife was there and everything. And at the time, I thought everything was cool. I thought, you know, hey, this is strictly business, and they all get it. They all know it is strictly business. And so we get in. I didn't find out until years later that Bruce got a lot of heat from his wife over having Jenna Jameson in their house.
We got a lot of Jenna Jameson questions, but this one epitomizes the general theme of the questions. Andrew Scott, how much time did you spend with Jenna Jameson making your entrance videos? And did she get the big Val Venis?
So those are really great questions, I must say. Really, it was just a one-day shoot. We spent pretty much, I'm saying, 3/4 of the day together. We did a bunch of different vignettes. Most of them never made it because Vince just decided that was going too far with her on there, and they only put her in a few small things. But we did a lot of recording. But no, it was strictly business. You know, my goal was to get these done in time so I can catch my flight and get back to Mexico and continue on with my gig down there. And so, yeah, we were just trying to get the videos done as quickly as possible and get all the vignettes in the can. So it was as business could be. But like I said, I had no idea that in the background, there's Bruce Pritchard's wife just steaming hot. And I had no idea, no clue until several years later that there was a little bit of heat there.
Here's a little fun fact for everybody at home as well to go and look at. So the strategically placed bandoliers of Jenna Jameson, if you look very closely, they're not bullets in the bandoliers. They're actually tiny little rubber cocks all the way up and down. But you only notice it unless you really squint and have a look.
Okay, hold on. This is when she popped up from behind the bush?
Yeah, she's wearing the two bandoliers, and they're not bullets in the bandoliers. If you look at it again, have a look at what they are.
I had no idea. Holy crap. Are you serious? I had no clue. I had no clue. That's interesting. I'm gonna go look at that.
Yeah, I promise you, because I actually saw that today just to be sure.
Wow.
Now this is something that I don't know if anyone's asked you this before, and Val Venis comes out finally on Raw maybe around May of 1998. All the vignettes have run. And there's a couple of shows where you're on and Triple H are on at the same time. And you've both got actually quite similar patter at the beginnings. Like, you're talking about how massive your cock is. And then Triple H comes out and talks about how massive his cock is later on. And then a couple of weeks later, that's taken away. Someone must have had word with Triple H and he never does it again. Do you remember there being any fallout about similarity of character?
No, I don't remember anybody saying anything about it. I remember there were a couple times Triple H would say things out in the ring that I was like, man, I could have said that. That would be much more appropriate if the Big Val Boski was saying stuff like that. But other than that, it wasn't anything that I looked at as, oh man, they're coming after Triple H because he's doing some of the stuff I'm doing. There was none of that. I don't ever remember anybody saying anything. At least they didn't tell me if there was anybody getting into his ear about what he was doing. There were a couple of times that I did watch on the monitor. He would say things and I'd be, that's kind of like my character. But other than that, it wasn't, if he got in trouble for saying things like that, I don't know. I never heard of it. No one ever said anything to me about it. So maybe it was one of the things he caught himself. Maybe it was like, yeah, maybe that one I really shouldn't do. So I don't know. I really don't know. I can only speculate. But yeah, I never, like I said, there were things he said that I was like, that would have been perfect for me to go out there and say, why is he go out there and saying that? That's not even, doesn't even suit his character, you know? But yeah, other than that, I don't remember anybody in the office getting on him about things he was saying or anything like that, you know? And of course, it all changed once he started dating Stephanie too. The whole power structure at that point started to change.
There may be a question about that a little later, if we get to it, by the way. Now, this next question I have to frame very carefully because it could come out as a total insult, but you'll know what I'm saying in a minute. Now, I don't know your anatomy at all. I'm going to make an assumption that you are not the second coming of Johnny Holmes. And in real life. Now, you can tell me you are or whatever, we won't find out. But did you ever caught a young lady who absolutely believed that you were going to be the second coming of Johnny Holmes, and then you had to explain that it was a character?
No. Here was the thing with me was I would say, especially back then, I was pretty conservative in the way very conservative business-like when I was backstage. This whole thing of, you know, I'd already been through the whole England thing for a whole year. And let me tell you, I left a lot of DNA all across across the UK, man.
Across many Butlins hotel rooms.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. But by this point in my career, it was one of the things, I think I was one of those guys that was just, I grew up and grew out of the whole rat stage of pro wrestling. I had bigger goals. To me, that was more childish. Like, and I understand there are some adults. You get Ric Flair, he never grew out of his childlike state. That guy's still a child today. Great dude, but let's face it, he is straight up still in that college mindset, going a million miles an hour. And I grew out of that. And I got bored of it. I got worried with it because, bad things can happen when you're getting involved with that kind of lifestyle. And so by the time I had gotten to WWE, I had really toned down that party wrestling lifestyle because I did go through there was a period of time where I was really living it up. But at that point in time, I had really wanted to start settling down. So to me, my time in WWE was mostly straight up business. The partying was pretty much gone out the window. I mean, I still went out once in a while, but even then we were calling early nights. You know what I mean? It wasn't like we were out till 6 a.m, even though early in my career that happened regularly. But now 1 in the morning, 1:30 in the morning, I'm heading back to the hotel and crashing out. And so by that time in my career, I didn't need to explain anything to any ladies because at that point I had my one lady and I was happy with that. I was focused on my career. And yeah, so I never really got myself into any situations like that by the time I had started WWE.
I'm so glad you answered that because, I mean, that was as delicately as I've ever phrased a question in my entire life because I didn't want it to come out wrong. We'll move on then.
But damn it, John Holmes only wished he could be the big Val Venis.
Yeah. Someone else has sent a question in, John Logan, and I do not know what the context of this is. Is it true that in the WWF, Sonny tried to get you to try bondage on her?
So here was the thing with Sonny, and I know Sonny's been around. And, again, I was in WWE at that time, and I was, pretty much straight-laced. This is a business. I'm going to treat it like a business. I ain't getting involved with that anymore. I'm tired of it. And now if this was 10 years before that and Sonny had said what she said to me, I would have been all up in that. But at this point in time, I have no interest, none whatsoever. All I want to do is make money. That's it. And create entertainment for the fans and make money doing entertainment. And one time it was the setup during the daytime at Raw. And Mark Henry and I went and sat at the commentator's table that was all set up for that evening. And we put the headphones on and we're just talking to each other. We're watching guys roll around in the ring, trying some new stuff out. We're just joking around, commentating, right? Oh, that's a really tight arm lock. He's really wrenching up on it. And we're just having a dialogue back and forth, Mark Henry and I are. And all of a sudden, the ear thing comes off my ear, and it's Sonny. She's pulling the ear thing off my ear and goes, "I'm into bondage." And I jumped up out of the seat, threw the headset down, and I went, "Whoa, that's way more than I needed to know." And Mark Henry's like, "What'd she say, Val? What'd she say?" And she's kind of, as she's walking away, she's looking at me, giving me that eye, you know what I mean? Like, toodaloo, as she's walking away. And I'm just like, man, the stories that I've heard about her are all true, clearly. And that was the extent of it, man. I never, it was one of those things where it was an experience to have her come up there and say that. And like I said, if it was 10 years before that, I would have gone, "You're into bondage. I've heard about bondage. You want to show me what bondage is? Let's go." But at that point in time, I've already got a lady. I'm happy. I'm grinding, trying to make money. My goals are changed from before. And so when that happened, it was like, well, that was an interesting little occurrence here, but no interest whatsoever. Absolutely none. And, but yeah, she had the balls to come up to somebody she didn't know me. I literally just met her a few weeks beforehand, and we've only had a few pleasantries backstage, as we're passing. "Hey, how you doing?" Blah, blah, blah. But to come up and just not know who I am or anything about me and pull the ear thing off and goes, "I'm into bondage." Yeah, she's on another level of
upfront
humanity, I guess. Yeah.
I bet you were happy as a one-woman chap that Sonny was fired probably just weeks afterwards. She was gone by like June, July anyway.
Yeah, she wasn't there very long. from what I understand, she was supposed to go out with, I believe, the Road Warriors to the ring, manage them, and she had a pill problem, and I guess she was all messed up. They found her backstage. From what I can remember, they found her backstage. They said, "We got to get you in rehab," and from what I've been told, she refused to go to rehab, and they fired her. I don't know. I've never really heard the whole story from her herself. So what I'm saying is just what I've heard. And you know how that is. If it's third-hand information or even second-hand information, I'll take it with a grain of salt until I hear it directly from the horse's mouth.
Yeah.
So, but that's what I heard happened.
Absolutely. God, the amount of things I've got here. I don't know where I'm going to go next. Okay. The backstage vignette with Mrs. Yamaguchi. She was, man. She was a nice-looking young girl, let me tell you. And,
beautiful.
And I'll tell you what, right? The thing that I remember the most about that vignette is Shawn Michaels doing the commentary over it at the time. Or I think Shawn Michaels was doing the commentary over the time. Do you remember Shawn constantly popping in and out of the WWF? He'd turn up as a commentator, then disappear for 2 months. Then turn up as the commissioner and disappear after a month, that kind of thing. How was Shawn to deal with at that time?
I don't remember Shawn popping in and doing like commentary and things like that very often. I know it happened once in a while. He popped in a few times, but I didn't know what his deal was with WWE. From what I understand, he had left after I signed there. He had left, and I believe it was right after that WrestleMania match where Mike Tyson had thrown the punch. And it was, what was it? Shortly after that, he had left, wasn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Austin,
that was his last match, yeah.
Austin was the referee in that match, I think it was.
No, so it was Tyson who was the referee, Austin Michaels.
Oh, Tyson, I'm sorry, yeah. That's right. Tyson was the one that punched Shawn Michaels. I'm sorry. Yes, Tyson was the one that punched Shawn Michaels, and he left shortly after that, if I remember correctly. And so I didn't really know Shawn Michaels all that much until he finally came back after a long time away. And from what I understand, Vince wanted him back at one point, and he told Vince that he's going through some things that he wanted to work out. So Vince just kind of kept him on the pay schedule. And then eventually, I guess, he became the whole Christian thing. He found God, and eventually that's what he was working on. And eventually he came back. But I can't remember, was it before that? I can't remember. I just remember him popping in and out a couple of times doing commentary and stuff. But I don't remember him being there full time for long periods of time.
Who around this time in your first year or two in the WWF, of the big stars, did you find most approachable or would be willing to give you advice, that kind of thing?
Back then, when I first started in WWE, is what you're referring to? Yeah,
let's say your first year in '98.
Yeah, I would have to say, Jack Lanza, Tony Gurria. As far as agents go that I would look at the time when I first started there, those are two guys that I would, kind of rely on for direction. As far as the talent, the upper echelon of the talent there, I would try to go to Austin every once in a while because, let's face it, that guy had a connection with the fans that was unbelievable. And so I try to pick his brain a few times, but Austin always seemed standoffish to me, very defensive. And so I never really got a whole lot out of Austin. Austin loved to talk about old school wrestling, which I'm a huge fan of old school wrestling. But while he's telling you different stories about old school wrestling, different things you can do, the whole time you just feel like he's very standoffish. He's very protective of his current position at that point in time, which is completely understandable, but a little bit paranoid, I think. And I think that made it uncomfortable for me to approach him on a regular basis. Guys that were comfortable to approach, I would say Rock was very comfortable to approach. He was a guy that was, he had that it factor and I think whatever it is you want to call it that Rock had that made him approachable just as an average human being, I think it's that it factor that has propelled him to the upper echelons of Hollywood today. And so I noticed that in the backstage, very clear, distinctive differences between approaching somebody like Steve Austin to ask for advice on certain things and going up to The Rock to approach him to ask him about certain things in regards to making emotional connections with the fans. Rock, very approachable. Austin, the appearance of being approachable may be there until you actually approach him, and you just get this idea that, okay, he's very suspicious about why I'm asking him these questions. You can tell he's standoffish. He's, just two different characters of human beings, really. But yeah, I'd say Rock was probably the most approachable. Now, Rock, I would never go to it for advice on how to wrestle, because let's face it, Rock ain't the best wrestler in the world. He does very basic things, but he's smart enough to make those very basic things over like Rover. The most ridiculous elbow drop on the face of the planet. The elbow drop sucks, but it's the best elbow drop going. And people bought into it. They love it. And so to me, I would go to Rock for, hey, how do you create that emotional connection with the fans? Because that clearly, you didn't have to question it. He knew how to create that emotional connection. But when it came to actual wrestling, I would probably go, not even so much with Austin, but I would prefer to go to Austin over Rock. But mostly, you'd go to people like Chris Benoit at the time, Eddie Guerrero at the time, Fit Finlay when he came, Fit Finlay, Dave Taylor, Steven Regal. Those were guys I would go to when it comes to, hey, I want to learn how to do this in wrestling. Those are the guys I would go to. But, when it comes to getting that emotional connection with the fans, The Rock was the most approachable guy for that.
I'm going to be skip, but I cannot skip this next question. Is, when did you first learn that Nicole Bass was trying to sue the company?
Ooh, I can't ever remember. I don't even recall really when I first learned about it. All I know is I was pissed off that I had to take time away from my day off that I had already planned 2 workouts, a morning workout and a night workout. You're dedicated, right? And I can't wait to get home and do these 2 workouts. Hey, Nicole Bass is suing the company. We need you to come into New York and testify. And I'm like, well, there goes that workout and the nighttime workout. So I found out about it over a phone call. It was just out of the blue. And I just remember being angry that my whole day that I had planned out, because you don't get a lot of days off. And so you try to structure your days where you can be as most productive, get the things you need done as quickly as possible. And that whole day was screwed up. And the whole time I flew to New York and sat in that courtroom, that's all I kept thinking about was, can't believe I'm here. Why do I got to be here? I'm just trying to perform. Why am I involved in this lawsuit? What do I got to do with it? Well, I was one of the guys responsible for helping Nicole Bass at least develop some kind of skill inside the ring that the company could use. And so, that's why they brought me in, was because I worked with her quite a bit, Was it
partly because also, in my mind, I think one of Nicole Bass's complaints was that she was hit over the head by a guitar that wasn't gimmicked. But of course it was, because it splintered into 1,000 pieces. So was it you who hit with the guitar, or was it Jeff? I can't remember.
It was Jeff that hit her over the head with the guitar. I don't recall doing it. I think it was Jeff. I think, because from what I can remember, I'm pretty sure it was Jeff that hit her with the guitar. Maybe I did it. I just don't recall doing it. I remember the image of the guitar, over her head and her head sticking out, but I don't remember. Was that me that did it, or was that Jeff? I can't recall. I don't recall. But those guitars, I was hit over the head with the guitar several times. It's not comfortable, but they break easy. And, he comes down with it, pretty swiftly and getting controlled. And I've never had an issue with it. And I remember how it hit her because I remember the visual of it happening. But I don't remember there ever being an issue. She never brought it up to me backstage. She was very nice. When we got backstage, I remember her being, "Oh, thank you so much. That was so awesome. I really enjoyed that. That was so good." I never remember her saying anything bad about it until the court case. Then all of a sudden I'm hearing, "Oh, the guitar messed me up." And I'm like, I don't recall that at all. You know what I mean? Like, that's not my.
Did she get anything out of it? Did she get any money at all? Or was it dismissed?
No, yeah, I think from what I recall, it was just completely dismissed. There were erroneous charges. She was just looking to get money. The one thing that amazed me, and it kind of really disappointed me, was when they brought Nicole Bass in. Nicole Bass was super nice, super cool. I'm a big proponent of integrity. Integrity to me it's the number one issue. And she was always really cool. She seemed like she wanted to learn. And the truth was, I believe she wanted to learn. We were out in the ring during the daytime and we're going over stuff over and over. She seemed like she was very interested in learning how to get it done. But the reality was the extent of her athleticism was lifting iron and dieting. That was what she was good at. She had 2 left feet in the ring. She just couldn't get it. And it's just one of those things. Some people just don't get it. And as much as I tried to work with her, to see her go from every moment knowing her, super nice person, the way she comes across wanting to learn it, but then in court she's sitting. I'm on the stand and she's sitting right across from me, and never once did she look me in the eye. It was like, and to me, okay, I know where this woman's integrity is. It's in the can, and deep in that garbage can. And she's trying to say that they fired her for saying that she couldn't get it, and that they fired her when she was getting it. And she was making some excuses to why she was fired. She was literally fired because they gave her every opportunity in the world to learn, and it was just one of those things that wasn't working out. And when they asked me on the stand, "What were your reports to the office?" And I was just being honest. I'm saying, "I'm working, trying everything I can. She's just got 2 left feet. That's just the way it is." And, a few other guys that were working with her were too, the same thing. The office was hearing our frustrations of trying to teach her things. And they ended up getting rid of her. And it is what it is at that point. But she never once looked me in the eye when she was so nice to me prior to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yeah, that's when I realized, okay, there's an integrity issue here. She's trying to sue a company for money by lying in court. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I bet that China was probably none too happy having a woman with even more muscle being on TV as well, because that was her thing.
That was her thing, yeah. And I don't know how China took it. As far as I saw, she took it like a champ. She never brought it up. But that was when I was around China. I never heard her talk anything bad about having Nicole Bass there. But it did enter my mind a few times, like, I wonder what China really thinks about Nicole Bass being there, especially because China, even though she wasn't the best wrestler in the world by any stretch, she could at least pick up the basics and do the basics fairly well. And to see Nicole Bass have even more opportunities than China did, because they gave her, in a very short span of time, a lot of opportunities to learn very basic things, and she couldn't even get the very basic things down. And to see that happen and then be in court with her, and just, it was unbelievable. It was so surreal to sit in court, have her not even look me in the eye. And then when you bring up China, I wonder what China really thought about that. That China's watching the office give this woman with more muscle a lot of opportunity in a real short period of time. Was she worried about maybe her spot? Like, what happens if Nicole Bass does get it? Do you know what I mean? So yeah, that's something that I never thought about. Maybe what China thought about the prospect of Nicole Bass possibly getting it in her mind and in her actions, and actually maybe taking her spot.
With lawsuits, you're a fan of a frivolous lawsuit, and you must be a fan of, at the same time, Sable suing the company as well. Which did that gall you as much or even more? Because I think she was trying to get $140 million at some point.
Is that what she tried to sue for? $140 million?
It was something like 9 figures. I'll look that up while you answer that. But yeah, were you like?
So, I'm a proponent of courts being used to make victims whole. If someone's been victimized, you got to make them whole. That goes back to integrity, right? With Sable, now I got along with Sable. I got along with pretty much everybody at work. But I've heard the stories that she was difficult to work with, but I never saw that myself.
Well, you tagged with her, didn't you? I don't know if anyone knows this or many people know it, but you did a loop against Mark Mero and Jackie in intergender matches.
We did, yeah. It was a short-lived deal with Sable, but yeah, we did a little run with Sable. And like I said, I got along with her. She seemed very cool to me. But I have heard the stories, people trying to do business with her, and it's like pulling teeth sometimes. I never had that experience with her. It was very, very easy to work with her. But she, on one hand, she did have a legitimate case because somebody, and I can only guess as to who it really was. From what I understand, it was X-Pac, but I don't know for a fact, but defecated in her bag. Now, I'm a big fan of ribs. Not so much of a fan of defecating in people's bags, but it is what it is. You know what I mean?
And where was it? Where was it?
It was in England, I believe it was.
Wasn't it? It was over in the UK.
Yeah. It was okay. So it was Manchester. Yeah, yeah. So I knew it was over there. I didn't know it was in Manchester. I forgot about that. But yeah, they defecated in her bag, and that immature side of me at one point when I heard that kind of chuckled, but immediately my other side was like, that ain't cool. Like, I wouldn't want that to happen to me. Like, that's just not cool. So, that was the conclusion I came to. I felt like she had a legitimate claim, not for $140 million.
$110 million. I'm very sorry. I added 30.
Yeah. So to me, her going to court, or you wouldn't even really have to go to court. I'm sure you could come to a settlement with the company for a few grand or whatever. And, it's about making the person whole. To me, that's a pretty crappy rib. No pun intended there. But that's a pretty crappy rib. And yeah, I could see making the person whole, a little bit of a financial compensation for that, and a promise not to have that happen again. So I think she had a little claim there, but to go to court and to sue for all the other things she's suing for, and to go for that kind of money, she just stacked, issue after issue after issue that really never should have been brought to court in the first place. It's another one of those things that, okay, now you're just trying to use the people's courts to enrich yourself over frivolous BS. And so, yeah, that's when the integrity part comes in. And that's kind of where I lost a lot of respect for her at that point. At that point, she just became, I'm not opposed to people becoming uber wealthy, but you need to do it morally and ethically. And that means creating value in the free market. And that means creating something, whether it's a product or a service, that other human beings find value in that product or service, and go ahead and become as wealthy as you want. But when you say, hey, someone crapped in my bag, I want $100 million. Okay, now we got an issue. That's the integrity thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's more money than the most expensive bag I've ever seen. I mean, they could have at least replaced the bag on it. I'll tell you what, I'm going to skip an entire page and a half and go to the first of 2 games, the only of 2 games we're going to play today. And I call it name association. Very easy. I'm just going to give you a sentence, a descriptor, and you just tell me who best fits that description. And we're going to go with funniest person in the locker room.
Road Dogg.
Specific joke or?
Oh man, Road Dogg to me, the time that I spent with Road Dogg, he was the life of the locker room. It wasn't any one specific joke. It was that he was constantly joking, constantly finding humor in things that would make you laugh. And then you're wondering, how the hell did he find humor in that pillow sitting on that corner couch? And it was constant. Road Dogg was the guy that was he just find humor everywhere he turned. And he was the life in the locker room. At least that was my experience with him there. Road Dogg was really good at just creating jokes out of anything that was available to him or in his view or whatever, or old stories he would bring up and put a new, Road Dogg spin on that story, and everybody would bust out laughing. Another guy that was in a different way, I call the king of one-liners, was Dean Malenko. No matter where you went, Dean Malenko had one line that he could spit out of nowhere. It was just created in his mind. He would spit it out, and the entire room would pop. So I think between Road Dogg and Dean Malenko, those are two of the funniest guys I thought were in the locker room.
Okay, excuse me. I've got about 4,000 of these, so I'll do the best ones. Last man standing at the bar.
So I was never really a bar guy too much. So I don't really have a whole lot of experience of who the last man standing was. Obviously, Ric Flair would be in that. There were times where I'd be at the bar and eating dinner, and my goal is maybe sit there for an hour and then go crash out. And, I've left the bar like 1 a.m, had my alarm set for 4:30 so I can go to the gym at 5 a.m. And when I come down into the lobby of the hotel, Ric Flair is still in the bar that should have closed by like 2. And he's still at a table with drinks still on the table. And so Ric Flair was definitely one of the guys that would be the last guys in the bar. Knobs and Sags, same thing in Australia during the Hulkamania tour. There were a couple of times where Godfather and I, we would just get together and smoke ganja and go to sleep. And we'd be up early in the morning to go to the gym, 5 a.m. We're going to the gym. And who's geeked out still in the bar? Knobs and Sags. Hey, guys, you've been up all night? Yeah, man, we're still here. And so Ric Flair, Knobs and Sags, yeah, those guys are the guys you regularly see last man standing in the bar.
The most beautiful woman, wrestler, valet, whatever it is, in real life.
If you're looking at a whole person, the character, the looks, everything, I would say Molly Holly. If we're just talking about what my eyes see and nothing else, Trish Stratus.
Two fine answers there.
Yeah.
Biggest bully?
JBL. JBL. JBL was, I always considered JBL to be a walking home entertainment center. There were times, because he never had a filter, things that would come out of his mouth were incredible. I don't know how he didn't get fired for some of the things that would come out of his mouth. And but it was funny. There were times where you could tell it was one of those days that JBL was spot on. He's in that mood. He's in that mode. And I would literally get my black coffee and just follow him around the arena, just tag along and just follow him around to see what he's going to say next. Because no matter what group of guys he would walk up to, he's taken over the conversation. And some of the stuff that comes in his mouth was astounding. And so if I was bored and I wanted some entertainment, I would follow JBL around the arena sometimes, Another guy that I never really considered a bully because, I was friends with him, number one. And number two, I always had good relations with him, is Bob Holly. Bob Holly was, to me, an old school guy. He was an old school wrestler. What a lot of the new guys that were coming in were considering what Bob Holly did being bullying. To me, was just old school. Don't do things this way. And here's your receipt for that. You know what I mean? To me, that wasn't really bullying. That was, now I have heard stories where he took it a little too far, maybe. I don't know how true those stories were, but I had, it could have been just the talent, because I know a lot of talent. It seemed that there was a period of a year or two where new guys were coming in from just being new to the industry. And it seemed like these guys took stuff that was so common and so normal in professional wrestling. They took it as bullying. There was a change in mentality of the new humans that were coming into the industry around that time. And I think Bill DeMott fell victim to that same change in mentality. You know, it was all of a sudden like you make a guy do 500 Hindu squats because he wants to break into the business. And he's already told his coach, I want to be the best in the business. I want to make it. Well, here's what you got to do. And it seems like when you start pushing guys too hard, there was no manliness to it anymore. It was like, oh, I threw up when I squatted. They're abusing me. That's just too much. You shouldn't have to push a human that much. And it seemed the whining became common in wrestling from the new guys coming up. And so I think when we talk about bullying, you know, I would say JBL, definitely a locker room bully, but, you know, in an entertaining way for the most part. You know, I've heard stories where it went a little beyond entertainment. Bob Holly, I never really experienced it. I have heard the story, so I can't say, you know, yay or nay to Bob Holly. But with Bill DeMott, I think he really fell victim to a change in the people coming into the industry, the mentality they had. It was a lot softer mentality. You weren't creating wrestling men anymore. It felt like the guys coming in were, oh, I sprained my ankle. I got to take 6 weeks off now. We used to work every night on sprained ankles. It was something you just had to do. And I don't know. I think the whole bullying thing brings up the whole topic of when did the industry change from guys that were gritty, guys that could get out there and they weren't going to whine and complain if they got peppered in the face with a closed fist, whether it was accident or intentional. You didn't have complaints. You had guys settle, you know, real world issues back in the locker room away from the fans. And it was more of it just felt more of a manly industry. It doesn't feel like a manly industry anymore. And I think around the time people started labeling some people bullies, I think that was around the time that really the attitude of new guys coming in was changing.
Are you saying that the young bucks are not manly?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are some of them that don't even know which restroom to use. I mean, it is what it is. Back when I was first breaking into the business, there was no question guys knew which restroom to use. When it comes to being offended, if just not even a sliver of what we would talk about in the car rides were ever to air on TV today, we would be canceled and buried in a heartbeat. And so people are easily offended now, which I think hurts the wrestling business. You know, the idea back in the day was the heel is supposed to offend the people. The people are supposed to develop such a hatred for that heel that they want to pay big money to watch the babyface kick the heel's ass. But now the heel is walking on eggshells. You can't be a real heel in this industry unless, well, I shouldn't say you can't be. It is refreshing to see at least one person bring back old school heelism. And to me, what I'm seeing today in the industry is one man's doing that. One man. And that's MJF. You know, he's bringing back that old school. I think he's the best thing going right now. You have people like Jericho, but Jericho you expect it from. He's old school. You expect him not to give a rat's ass about people being offended. You just expect that from Jericho. You know how he was brought up. He was brought up in that time where offended. I'm not offended by that. I might be angry that you said that to me, but I'm not offended about it. Let's work this out. Now it's like there is no working it about it. It's like I'm offended, and now I'm going to take this public, and we're gonna cancel you on all your social media, and they just want to get rid of you. So you expect it from Jericho to really have that grit and have that grit come out in his performances. But the only new guy that I see working today in this industry that is really embracing that old school mentality and doesn't seem to really care if he's offending people, which is fantastic because that's missing in pro wrestling, and that's MJF. Mm-hmm. And I think it's refreshing to see the work he's doing. The promos he cuts is incredible. He's one of those guys that I personally think when I hear MJF swear, which I'm hearing a lot of guys swear in AEW, I think when MJF swears, and this is just my personal opinion and being a little more mature in the business now, I look at MJF, I'm hanging on every word coming out of his mouth, and then a swear word comes out. Now, if you had asked me 10 years ago, I wouldn't even have thought twice about the swear word. But he's making his entire character the epitome of why MJF exists, is pinpointed to money. The end result of every promo is, why do you do what you do? Money. Who's going to pay me the most? So he's made that the pinnacle of his career, and everything he says and everything he does is geared towards accomplishing that goal of more money, right? And so he's identified, and the fans identify why MJF exists. Money. The man loves money. Everything he does is geared towards that. He'll use offensive tactics in order to, elicit that emotional reaction with the fans. He's not afraid to do it. But when he drops a cuss word, if the epitome of your goal is money, you got to know that if you have 100 people watching you, doesn't matter. This is just the reality of your audience, the reality of society. The second you drop a cuss word, it might only be 2, 3, 4% of the audience, but they're going to turn the channel. That 2, 3, even if it's 1% of several million people watching, that's a huge drop in viewership. And ultimately, that's a little drop in money because ratings matter. And he gets that. You can hear it in his promos. But he doesn't get that if it's about money, he should go out there and say, you know what? I've watched my promos, and he always says he's analytical with the ratings. And I'm analytical with the ratings, and I know that every time I drop a cuss word, like, let's be real, right? Because it's something the fans can go and check out for themselves. And when I drop a cuss word, I can see the analytical ratings drop a little bit. So from now on, I've realized that I'm too damn good on this mic. I don't need to cuss. You're all hanging off every word I say anyway. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think if he came out, and I think the cussing that MJF does, 10 years ago, it wouldn't have made me cringe. Now it's like, oh, he was doing so good. He just lost about 3% of his audience there on that one promo. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's, I think MJF is so damn good at what he does, it hurts him when a cuss word slips out. But he's young. What is he, 25, 26, something like that?
26, 27, something like that. Yeah.
I think he's smart enough. I think he'll realize that eventually. And I think eventually he'll be like, I don't really need to cuss. I'm over. I get over because of what I talk about. And I think, I don't know. I hope he catches on to that. And I think he's intelligent enough that he will catch on to it.
With the rest of these questions, they're all going to have to be one-word answers because we're coming up to our time, and then I might ask 1 or 2 more questions after that if time dictates. But for the rest of these, most bullied.
Most bullied, in the locker room?
Yeah.
I would have said back in my time, the most bullied person I saw was S.A. Rios. I felt bad for him, man. I felt bad for him. I think I don't know, man. Guys would be pushing him around, and now he's a veteran. Now they don't push him around anymore, from what I understand. But there were times where he just wanted to go out there and perform. He loves wrestling. He was the younger guy coming in from Mexico. And I got along with S.A. Rios really well. He was always a really good performer. I worked with him well. But I saw how a lot of guys treated him in the locker room and treated him like he was, and blatantly and openly treated him like he was secondary underneath talent that should feel privileged and honored to be in the locker room. And a lot of guys were just looking at it. I don't know if they were doing it to try and make him get out of the locker room. I think they were doing it just for laughs, and he just seemed like an easy target. But I remember a couple times people like just shoving him around verbally, and There was a couple times. Yeah, S.A. Rios was the guy that I saw that people would jump on a few times. Yeah. Oh. Other than that, I never really saw too many people get bullied. I know some people did. Stasiak did, but he kind of brought it onto himself. But S.A. Rios was the guy I saw that at times I was like, that's a little over the
top. So just one word answer: smelliest wrestler.
Oh, easy, Vader. Vader.
Biggest stooge for the dirt sheets?
That I never knew. There were times, dude, stuff was getting out and into the dirt sheets before, and I'm like, who? That could only come from somebody backstage here. And I always wondered myself. I was always wondering who's doing that. Who knows these guys? You know what I mean?
Most in trouble with the office?
Randy Orton.
Why Randy Orton? I've got a feeling why, but why Randy Orton?
Back when Randy Orton came in, he was immature. He was and he was put into a big position. Earned him a young guy that was quickly moved up to the top of the card, making a boatload of money, and it's party time. And, you thinking that at that time, at that age, you're earning that kind of money, you're on top of the world. It's exhilarating, and you don't really get down to business. It's like, where's the party at after the show? And so he was getting into a lot of trouble. He was already arrogant, full of himself, which I knew a lot of guys like that. It wasn't anything out of the norm, but he kind of took it to a new level when he first came in. I remember Randy Orton at a steakhouse. We were all sitting around a steak, and they brought our steak. And to me, it looked like the plate that they put in front of him was exactly what he ordered. But he literally picked up the steak with his 2 fingers. He goes, "What the hell is this?" to the waitress, and tosses the piece of steak at her. Like throws a fresh steak right at her. Goes, "Get me a new one." And I'm like sitting at the table going, "What the hell are you doing, Riz? You can't do that." But he was in that mindset, hey, I'm young, I'm earning money, I'm the man, you know what I mean? Now, Randy did grow out of that. He was very immature when he first came in. And I think he would tell you that too. But he grew out of that quickly. I know that a lot of the upper guys sat him down several times and had discussions with him. And you could see the transformation of him becoming more responsible as time went on. And I think it was with each time they took him and sat him down and had a, heart-to-heart with him, he would become more of an honorable man with integrity every time. And I think that in the long run clearly benefited him there, because he's still going today, and now there's no issues with him. He goes, he's there to make money. And, I think the cockiness is out of him now.
Forget the one-word answers, because the answers are too interesting to keep to one word. Whose bag did Randy Orton shit in?
Randy Orton shit in someone's bag?
I believe so, and I can't remember who it was. I think it was one of the girls, possibly.
I don't know. The only thing I remember is X-Pac shitting in Sable's bag. I don't recall Randy Orton do it. It wouldn't surprise me if he did, because back in those times, that would be Randy Orton. In fact, I tend to think I remember thinking when I heard that Sable had crap in her bag, I think one of the first names that popped into my head was Randy. Where's Randy? So it wouldn't surprise me, but I don't remember him actually crapping in someone's bag. That's interesting.
Do you know who it might have been? It might have been someone from the Diva Searchers or something like that. Rochelle Lowen. I don't know who that name is. Anyway, I'll move on. We'll try and sneak in a couple more.
Oh, wait a minute. Was this the girl that quit on the flight from Alaska back to the States? This might have, okay. If it's the same thing, I might be confusing it with a different thing, but I know Randy had some issue with one of the girls from the Diva Search, that when we went to, I think we went Hawaii, Japan, Alaska, and then Alaska back to LA. And in Alaska, that girl quit because of Randy. I think that might have been what you're talking about.
Well, maybe it wasn't shit. It says self-tanning lotion and baby oil was poured into a bag. But I've got, there's too many shit in bag stories.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? Yeah, that might have been it then, because I don't remember Randy shitting in anybody's bag. That I don't recall that.
Oh,
but I could see oil and stuff like that, and tanning lotion.
I'll give you this one, maybe one more, and then I will thank you for your time. Most memorable backstage fight.
Most memorable backstage fight. It was one. So I would say the most memorable one. I never really saw any of the fights backstage. I was only, I don't know where I was in the arena when they took place, but I do remember hearing the fight between Booker T and Dave Bautista. And so I remember, to me, that when people talk about backstage fights, for me personally, that's the most memorable one. Now, by the time I had gotten around to where all that took place, it was already broken apart and it was all done. But from what I recall, that was, Booker T just teed off on Batista. And it was Batista, I guess, that called Booker T out for the fight. And it didn't end well for him. From what I heard, like I said, I didn't see it. I'm just taking this as secondhand information. By the time I got around to where the fight was, it was already over. Now, outside of backstage, there was one of the most memorable ones for me ever in WWE was the one where it was the night that Owen passed. And it was Bradshaw and Blackman. And Bradshaw had been poking Blackman for a long time at this point, sticking his thumb up his ass. And Blackman, not really a guy you want to mess with, And so we were getting off the plane, and I guess Blackman had told Bradshaw a few times, don't do that. Don't take your thumb and stick it up my ass again, and just warned him several times. And we're all at baggage claim, and I can see Blackman standing there with his arms crossed, waiting for his bag to come around. And out of the corner of my eye, Bradshaw walked up behind him again, and I didn't see the thumb go because I wasn't really paying attention. All I saw out of the corner of my eye was Blackman do a quick 180 and pop, 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 pop. And I saw Bradshaw's head go bang, 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 bang. And then Blackman seemed to, it happened so fast. This is just what I'm recalling. He took a step back, and it looked like he's going to spin kick his head off. And when he took that step back, I guess his foot went into the handle of some lady's bag. And that's when there was Al Snow. I think it was Al Snow, if I remember correctly, jumped on him and waist locked him, and then a bunch of other guys. And I was already running over there, so I kind of piled on. And they kind of got Bradshaw pushed away. He was still kind of dazed. But everybody was like, if he had thrown that kick, it was game over for Bradshaw. The funny part was, we get to the arena, and as I'm walking towards catering, all the boys are in catering. I can see Bradshaw pacing back and forth in the hallway right in front of catering. And, or not Bradshaw, it was Blackman pacing back and forth in front of catering. I said, bro, you all right? He's like, I'm going to kill that motherfucker. So I'm like, damn, dog. And no sooner did that happen, I see Bradshaw come around the corner to come to catering. And Steve Blackman just went, roar. It started like speed walking towards him. And Bradshaw's got his hands up. And Bradshaw's like, brother, listen, man. He says, I just want to come here and let's talk. Because he doesn't want Blackman on him. And Blackman walked right up to him, pointed right in his face. And he goes, this is what you're going to do. You're going to go in that catering in front of all the boys. You're going to announce that you apologize to me right in front of everybody, or I'm going to fucking kill you. And without any, see, Bradshaw's got no shame, right? Has no shame in his game. Without any hesitation whatsoever, he grabbed Blackman by the wrist. He goes, let's go. And took him right into the catering. Hey, everybody, I got an announcement to make. I want to apologize to you, Mr. Blackman. I don't want to die today. He's got no shame in his game. And that's what I was talking about. Bradshaw's a walking home entertainment center. You never know what's going to come out of his mouth. You're going to be entertained no matter what. Whether it's on TV or whether it's in real life. He's that guy.
We have, it's a shame not to end on that story. We've got time for just one more quick question, and then I'll get some plugs off you. We'll shut the podcast down. The hardest deliverer of chair shots. Could be Bradshaw again.
Say again, sorry?
The hardest deliverer of chair shots or weapon shots in general.
So I've always, I would say almost every chair shot I've ever taken was hard, what I would consider hard, but safe. The one time I would consider it maybe a little excessively hard and knocked me out for like a fraction or maybe 2-3 seconds, I guess it was live on TV. I clotheslined Triple H over the top rope to the outside. And then I came out underneath the bottom rope, the other side of the ring, and walked around to meet Triple H where he's going to crack me over the head with the chair and get a DQ. And when I came around and he caught me with that chair, it was one of those things where I don't remember anything. When my eyes opened up for the first few seconds, all I can see are lights, people, and a wrestling ring on one side of me. And I don't know what my own name is. I don't know why I'm there. I don't know what I'm supposed to do for about what seemed like forever, but it was only about 2-3 seconds. And then all of a sudden your marbles come back together and you're like, oh yeah, I'm still in a wrestling match. I got to finish this up now. Because even though he got DQ'd, he's going to pull me back in the ring and give me the pedigree. But those first few seconds, when you open your eyes and you come to and you don't know who you are, you don't know what you're doing, I'm not going to lie, man, that's a scary, scary thing. Like when you become frightened, that's what I felt. I felt like a child for those first few seconds. And I would say that was probably the hardest I was ever hit over the head with a chair, was by Triple H.
Is this the one? Because somebody else, and this is further down the script, has said that there was a chair shot in 2005 in Sheffield, England. Was this the one that you're referring to?
I believe that was the one. I could be wrong, and that sounds like it might have been Sheffield, England. Yeah, I don't really recall specifically what town it was, but that sounds about right. That could definitely be right.
And guess who was in the audience? Me for that. I don't remember it though. I'll have to rewatch.
Oh, you were there for that?
I was actually there for that. Would you believe? Yeah.
Oh, very good, very good. Yeah.
Did you ever get any like long-lasting, concussion syndrome, anything like that, or did you start recalling quite quickly afterwards and no long-term ill effects?
No, I had ringing in my ears. It was the one that really scared me. I've had smaller concussions before, but it is what it is. I had a headache for a day or two and then it went away and then you just continue on, it's just the way it is. That one there, I still worked, but it messed me up. If you looked at my pupils, I had one pupil that was really small and would not change in size, and the other one would still fluctuate with light and darkness. And I constantly had a very light, fine ringing in my ear to the point where I wouldn't notice it if I'm sitting here talking with you or but at nighttime when I'm laying my head down and it's super quiet, I could still hear that ringing in my ear. And that lasted for almost a year after that chair shot. So and that's scary to me, man. Anytime you get your brain rattled like that and there's a little bit of damage done, that's a scary prospect. But what can you do? You just got to kind of put it out of your mind and keep living, right? But that was the hardest I was ever hit, was by Triple H, and probably the most scared I've ever been after being knocked out and waking up. For those first few seconds, that fear can be overwhelming. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from the Bradshaw story to sort of the Debbie Downer story, the last one, it's maybe not the best story to end on, but I will thank you so much for your time. And I tell you what, when I say that I haven't got to a quarter of the questions that I wrote for you, I may be underestimating myself there. I had so much, and there's a part 2, 3, 4 in there if we need to get there, and if you're willing to do some more. But for now, thank you so much. Have you got any plugs you want to throw out?
Yeah, you could follow my YouTube channel. It's topshelfanarchy.com. And that's where I do all my activism, my court cases. I try to get into court as much as I can and really expose the system for what it is. It's an extortion racket for people that don't want to produce real value in the private sector. And for the most part, And so that's what my whole YouTube channel is about. It's blowing up right now. It's people are starting to get what it is I'm trying to accomplish. So definitely follow TopShelfAnarchy.com. Also, I'm on Gab as well because I got booted off of Twitter. So completely banned off of Twitter. Apparently, I offended the wrong people, and they kicked me off of Twitter, permanently banned me. So I'm on Gab. I'm also on Instagram as well. So Instagram, I have 2 accounts. I have my Top Shelf Anarchy account, and I have my Val Venis ENT account. So ENT, short for entertainment. And I generally post a lot of my activism stuff up there as well.
Okay.
So yeah, YouTube, TopShelfAnarchy.com will take you right to my YouTube channel.
Okay, I'll get some links sorted. They'll be on every clip on the main interview as well. So if you want to go there, you've got the links in the description. But for now, thank you so much, Sean, for spending so much time with me, and maybe a part 2. I mean, I've already written a part 2, 3, and 4, so why not in the future, eh?
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, my friend. Much appreciated.